Chapter 68 Songs of Untruth. Jacqueline Darcy was prepared in advance with some delivered documents which looked to her to be absolute bullshit. Her job was to make it seem like it wasn't bullshit. An earthquake and storm? A meteor storm? It seemed the story that they were going with was that it was a goodwill mission to protect Xing and others from a natural disaster. According to the data she was given, it was apparent to Thanatos that an earthquake and several storms were going to take place near Blackmaw. If left unchecked, the dark dust and iron sand would spread elsewhere, which was total crap. But she could work with the earthquake, she supposed. Even in Xing, it was felt even if not great. The fissures they were much longer would have connected to several bodies of water, infecting them with dark dust. Not just that, they could impact a lot of drinking water locations. That much was true. She could work with that. She began writing a story about how they brought as many elves as possible in order to help with the magical properties of the storm. It was an unnatural storm, and a lot of elves had to work together to dispel a tornado. She couldn't say how the tornado got there. Well, at least they had proof they did dispel the magic of her tornado. All of her contacts within the 12 houses couldn't tell her how or why they were there. They could confirm that arrows were being shot into Blackmaw. They brought in help from the Sun and Moon Court and went to considerable expense just to do seemingly nothing. She wanted the real story. She got fed up, going at her own peril to Darius. The Gauss estate was in an uproar. The company had people going in and out, and it was clear there was more work than they could handle. The chaos made it easy for Jacqueline to step in. Those at the front door already knew her by name. She entered to find a panicked group of doctors and healers trying to simply keep alive a high number of men just long enough for them to be cured. She entered to see sights she did not expect to see. She saw beds and rooms. Her interest was caught when she saw Florengale and Augustana walking into the same room. She followed to see them looking over a sick and dying Darius Urn. Jacqueline approached to see him battered and bloody. His bones in his hands were shattered. His body was broken, and it looked like black veins covered his body. Florengale began to work, shaking hard. This is not going to be easy. Jacqueline was horrified by what she saw. A natural disaster? This? Impossible. What manner of danger had he put himself in? She fought the urge to go in there. In fact, it was good she didn't. She watched at a distance until a small 5'0" blonde girl approached. She wore frilly and attractive clothing, meant very much for a girl, but her face barely should belong to one. It was fierce and angry. That of one who was focused on survival. It was Alice, although Jacqueline would never hear an utterance of her name. "I'll heal him. You'll mess it up." Florengale argued with her sister. "Anyone but you." Alice was having none of that. "We need him. If he dies, we lose everything. You really think we'll be able to stand up to the 12 houses? They'll kill me, they'll use you, and there won't be anything left of our family by the time they're done. I need to heal him. He can't die." It was self-preservation more than love, but she was angry, gritting her teeth. Her eyes flared with superiority and animosity. She would not allow her useless sister to work on Darius alone. Augustana joined her. "She will not heal him alone. There are many who will see him well. We have the best looking into his care." The best? Hardly. Alice was the best, and she knew it. Alice growled and had to accept the fact they were not going to let her near Darius. Perhaps that was right of them. Perhaps she really wouldn't resist the urge to put some sort of poison in him or find some way to find leverage on him later. Even so, she needed him whole. "You don't have me. That shows how much you know." "Fine, I will not work on him. I will be here overseeing the care he is given. Begin by drawing the nephelite to one spot. It'll attract to itself. Ideally, if we get a piece of large enough, it'll naturally gather. I have means to neutralize it at that point before removing it. We can't let him be seen like this. Has there been anyone who's seen him?" Jacqueline saw him, but hopefully no one saw her. Augustana looked to the open door. "We best shut the door. Is everything we need here?" Alice went on. "Make sure no one who sees him like this talks. Kill them if you have to. How many doctors have seen him? I'll let Isla do the main work. I trust that's acceptable. Begin immediately. I'll stay a distance away." Kill anyone who saw him? Jacqueline started leaving at once, wanting no part in this. This was worse than she thought. His life. No. Not just his life. Everyone in this house had a life that hung by a thread. If Darius died? Jacqueline began considering what would happen. The tiny blonde wasn't too far off. The house of Gauss would most likely fall under the jurisdiction of the 12. They'd fight with one another over who got what, and they probably would use Florengale. But she didn't know who the other girl was. "They'd kill me," she said. It was abundantly clear there was more to the story. But she herself would not let Darius be known to be in the weakened state. If the right people knew, they might try to kill him while he was injured. His guard was down, and he didn't have the security he normally did. Jacqueline realized the grave situation and the importance that no one find out what happened in Blackmaw. She would write what she could, using what facts she could. She needed a witness or two. Yes, this would be her own way of protecting their allies. With a little thought, she finally got a plan. She went to their other compound, looking around for anyone who might not be sick and dying. At last she was in luck. She found who she was looking for, Kenson and Sven. She approached them. "I need your help. I need a story, fast, before anyone finds out what really happened down in Blackmaw yesterday." They looked to each other. Kenson remembered her. "We might not be of much help. It didn't matter right now. I need all the facts you can give me. I need to write something that will buy us a little time. We can't have the wrong people looking into this now." Sven countered, "The wrong people most likely are already looking into it." Jacqueline shook her head. "Yeah, but not all of them. Not if we give them a story they can believe. We had an earthquake, a falling rock from the sky, and a tornado. What else happened that I can write about?" They looked at one another. Sven reminded Kenson, "She was trusted enough by Darius to meet us. She isn't wrong. All will want to know more. We will need to tell them something. This one works with Colonel Orne, yes?" Chapter 69. Wounds. Alice had to watch for hours before she realized more and more of an ugly truth. Darius was dying. His men were dying or already dead. She didn't truly know what he had done or what was worth risking not only his life, but hers. She saw them in their state of mortality. She had often seen men and women be hurt. Indeed, she herself had brought servants or prisoners to the brink of death. She watched her parents die little by little. Death was a constant thing, but only now did it scare her. She considered her own family. She considered how easily powerful armored men died. Then she considered herself. Darius was stable, but it was clear that this security would not now, nor would it ever, be enough. Isla worked as best she was able, making up for the lack of knowledge Alice had with effort and spiritual power. That would not be enough. Nephlite would reject their healing, pushing away every bit of magic, making it a matter that was beyond them. However, Isla was used to this so far. She had healed soldiers as they had the Nephlite removed from their body. In this case, it was harder. There was much more, and there was significant damage. His bones had been near liquefied, and important arteries popped. Alice left. Stable was not good enough. She needed him awake and well, able to make an appearance. Even if he appeared weak, that could be a problem. The 12 houses might try to kill him. No, more than just them. He had made many enemies and would continue to do so. Such instances where he was laying bedridden could not be allowed. As she passed the soldiers on the way to the lab, she considered that Darius alone would not suffice. They were called immortals. It was time they lived up to the name. Everything dies? She would see. She began to consider things she had not before. Healing, aging. How best to combat it? Her solution required magic. Lots of it. No matter the angle she noted, with magic a solution could be found. Her opponent was no longer Nephlite. It was inevitable death that awaited them all. Elves, she noted, lived long, as too did dwarves. Here's where her theory began. Races that lived such unnatural lives all had magic. Slowing aging would be possible with the right amount of controlled magic. There were stories of monks who lived unnaturally long lives by control and meditation. In the end, it was controlling the flow of magic within oneself. She was convinced of this, and she knew she wasn't wrong. She decided it was time to put her focus to old age and healing, leaving her sister and Augustana to handle the care of Darius. Scipia was the first to awaken. It might be perhaps that he was recently cured of Nephlite that his treatment was swift and effective. When he awakened, there was no one at his side. His hands shook once again, but his body was healing. They must have done it. They must have won. He slowly made the attempt to crawl out of bed before learning he could not so easily stand. Augustana was nowhere to be found. Doubtless there were others that needed her help. He stumbled as he attempted to walk. Fortunately, there was a loose crutch that he found leaning against the wall. He found himself wandering around, looking for water. Instead, he found the high numbers of bodies gathered at the Gauss estate, and even more, no doubt, at the Thanatos complex. Scipio saw many for black maw, and the sight wasn't much different than the suffering that occurred after the observatory was found. This time they had a cure, but they also had so many more in urgent care, and they didn't have the space needed to treat them all. He made his way around the complex. Then he looked over a stray paper. He read as best he could. A storm, an earthquake, tornado, and meteor shower. Is that the way we're saying they fought? He supposed you couldn't just put in the paper they fought a goddess and won. The implications alone would send the masses into uproar. It wasn't a terrible lie. It was true the dark dust would need to stay out of a water supply. It became apparent that Darius was not at work. Everything was in chaos. The relative order he provided was gone. He's made his way to Darius's office. Empty and locked. He wasn't going to pick the lock with his shaking hands, nor was he going to be able to force the door down with his injury. Much to his surprise, he met Sai, who greeted him quietly with a nod. He gave a hushed summary that Darius was in intensive care. Not just him. Meredith and most of the Black Blades. The elves were caring for their own. They were victorious, but it cost them greatly. Scipio asked them to open the door to Darius's office. Sai torn into an air envelope with a key in it, opening the door to the office. On the desk were 3 envelopes instructed to be delivered in the event of Darius's death. One to Meredith, one to Augustana, and one to Scipio. There were others, but Scipio picked up what must have been a stack of papers addressed to him. Scipio started opening it. Sai got nervous. He's not dead. Scipio opened it anyway and read the papers left behind. As he read, he came to a conclusion. Darius accepted the possibility he could die. Often he kept his plans to himself, but he must not have had a choice. He had to leave something behind just in case. Scipio read. In silence he read and read. His eyes went intense. He read about Alice. He read about the 12 houses. He read about Isla Gaust. He read about the murder of Leonardo and Jean Gaust. The deal he made in order to acquire the cure. The means he obtained, the Black Blades. The true purpose of ending Haikatai. He knew it would extend the life of the world, but there was more to it. Haikatai apparently had some method to drain witches of their magic. They needed to learn how to drain magic from those who were dying or dead. He read and handed the paperwork to Sai. Please burn it. He asked that I take command in his stead should the worst happen. He is not dead now, but I should at least attempt to manage things in his absence. Scipio had with him legal paperwork to name himself steward, temporarily or permanently if necessary. With crutch in hand, Scipio stepped out of the office and spoke to Sai. We must allow Flor and Gale to make appearances. Further, we need to maintain an appearance of strength. He needed to hire staff to assist with the simply alarming amount of care required to tend to the wounded. He asked Sai to be his hands as he wrote letters to the Moon and Sun Court asking for any help that could be offered. It did not sound desperate. He meaningfully wrote it as such. He looked over the state of the Black Blades and Meredith, all in critical condition with no sign of reprieve. The business had to continue. He looked over stocks and signed documents in Darius's stead, all the while waiting until nightfall. He read and thought more of the plans he was given. It wouldn't end here. The magical races, the very elves that helped them, the dwarves, the dragons, all of them had to die. Darius was making plans to kill them all. The order hadn't been decided, but it was clear enough his intentions. Scipio looked over the notes and maps with sad eyes, having to use book codes to read some of Darius's thoughts. He shook his head and finally took a sip of hard liquor. He could not handle this. If what he was reading was to be believed, could he do it? Even if it was for the sake of the world, could he kill every magical race? Could they keep hunting down gods? Could they do it? Would they do it? Even if it started with witches and dark elves, where would it end? Death tolls he guessed would be in the millions. Everyone in the world would be against them. If what he was reading was true, he wasn't ready for this. All he could do was hang onto his crutch and try to keep the shaking company stable. Keep the bills paid and what deals that were promised honored. Even if Darius were right, this and his plans were indeed justified. So many would have to die. Not just other races, no doubt a significant number of humans. Nations and empires would likely collapse before they let this happen. Banning magical artifacts? Slaughtering major threats to the world? Slaughtering the gods themselves? Was even survival worth it? Would it be morally right thing to just allow themselves to die? It was clear the name Thanatos was the true name. The ministry was a happy and flowering guise for the true intention. Healing, world aid, goodwill, all of it lies. Plans for mass murder were being drawn, and fear shook Scipio, until at last he found sleep.